My wife's boyfriend texted her while I was standing in her kitchen holding divorce papers. He didn't know I was there. She didn't know I was there. Nobody knew I was there, except me and that text and the sound of her laughing on the phone with him upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat down at our kitchen table, the one we picked out together at a flea market, and I made a decision that changed everything. Stay till the end. Because where this story goes, you won't see it coming. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. I want to be honest with you from the jump. I am not the kind of guy who talks about his feelings. I'm Charlie. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a house where my dad showed love by fixing your car without being asked, and my mom showed love by leaving a plate covered in foil on the stove when you came home late. Nobody sat around naming their emotions. You just dealt. You moved forward. You kept the lawn mowed and the bills paid, and you didn't make a scene. So when my marriage to Victoria started quietly falling apart, I did what I was raised to do. I kept the lawn mowed. Victoria and I had been together for 10 years. Married for 8. We met at a 4th of July party at a mutual friend's place. She was laughing at something across the yard, and I remember thinking, that's the kind of laugh that changes a room. I introduced myself. She gave me a hard time about my Ohio State shirt within 30 seconds of meeting me. I thought she was the most interesting woman I'd ever stood next to. We were engaged within a year. For a long time we were good. Really good. The kind of good that makes you believe all those songs on the radio actually mean something. We had a small house in Raleigh, a dog named Biscuit, a running joke about her terrible taste in action movies that somehow became our thing. I coached Little League on Saturdays. She did pottery on Sunday mornings. It was ordinary in the best possible way. But ordinary has a way of going quiet on you without warning. I couldn't tell you exactly when the distance set in. It wasn't one fight or one night. It was more like a slow leak, the kind you don't notice until the tire's already flat and you're stranded on the side of the road wondering how long you've been riding on nothing. She stopped asking about my day. I stopped reaching for her hand. We started having entire evenings where the TV was the loudest thing in the room and neither of us thought to turn it down. My buddy Dave was the one who said it out loud. We were grabbing beers one Thursday and he looked at me across the table and said, "Charlie, man, are you actually happy or are you just comfortable?" I laughed it off, changed the subject, ordered another round. But I drove home that night and sat in the driveway for 12 minutes before going inside. Because I knew. I think I'd known for a while. I just hadn't let myself say it yet. It took me 4 more months to call a lawyer. Her name was Patricia. Sharp, no nonsense, the kind of woman who made you feel like the paperwork was the easy part and the hard part was whatever came after. She was right. The morning I was supposed to serve Victoria the papers, I woke up before my alarm and just stared at the ceiling. Biscuit was at my buddy's place. The house I was staying at, Dave's spare room, was dead quiet. I sat there thinking about the 4th of July party where I'd first heard her laugh. I wore a plain gray t-shirt and jeans. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just needed to feel like myself, like Charlie from Columbus, not like a man walking into the wreckage of his own life. The envelope was on the passenger seat. I didn't look at it the whole drive over. I still had a key. Patricia had said to knock, but I still had a key. I pulled up to the house at 9:47 on a Friday morning. The hydrangeas Victoria had planted along the front walk were in full bloom. Deep blue, almost purple. She'd been so proud of those things. I remember thinking that whoever lived here next would enjoy them without knowing what they cost her. I sat in the truck for a moment. What kind of man knocks on the door of his own house? I got out. I knocked anyway. No answer. I used the key. Speech balloon, let me ask you something before we go further. Have you ever stayed in something way past the point you knew it was over, just because leaving felt like failure? Drop it in the comments. I think more of us have been there than we admit. The house smelled like her perfume and fresh coffee. That hit me harder than I expected. 8 years of Friday morning coffee. 8 years of that same vanilla scent in the hallway. My chest did something complicated and I told it to stop. Victoria. Nothing. I stepped into the kitchen. The coffee maker was still hot. 2 mugs on the counter. One with lipstick on the rim, one without. I stood there looking at those 2 mugs for probably 5 seconds longer than I needed to. That's when her phone lit up on the counter. I wasn't trying to read it. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't snooping. The screen just lit up. Right there. 6 inches from my hand. And the name at the top said Dev and the message underneath said, in plain white letters on a gray bubble, "Is he gone yet, beautiful?" I didn't move. I'm not sure I breathed. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 40 pounds. I set it on the counter without meaning to. Just set it down like my hand had made a decision my brain hadn't caught up to yet. Beautiful. I heard movement upstairs. Light footsteps. Then Victoria's voice, low and warm in a way I hadn't heard her speak in years. "Just a few more minutes, I promise." She was on the phone with him, while I was standing in her kitchen, while the divorce papers were sitting next to her coffee mug. I should have left. I know that. Patricia would have told me to leave. Dave would have told me to leave. Every reasonable voice in my head was telling me to leave. I pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table instead. I don't know what I was feeling exactly. It wasn't rage. Not the hot, explosive kind anyway. It was something colder and quieter. Like stepping outside in January and feeling the air go still right before a storm. Everything just clarified. All those nights I'd talked myself out of the truth. All those months of maybe it's just a rough patch and maybe I'm not trying hard enough. All of it just dissolved. I heard her laugh upstairs. That same laugh I'd fallen in love with at a 4th of July party. I put my hands flat on the table and looked at the grain of the wood. We'd picked this table out together at a flea market in Durham. She'd haggled the guy down by $20 and been proud of herself for a week. The footsteps started coming down the stairs. She came around the corner still looking down at her phone, hair loose, wearing a yellow robe I didn't recognize. She looked up. The color left her face so fast it was almost clinical. "Charlie." "Morning," I said. That was all I could manage. Morning. Like I'd just come down for breakfast. Her eyes went to the envelope on the counter. Then back to me. Then to the phone in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. "Charlie, She stopped. Started again. "How long have you been sitting there?" "Long enough," I said. She set the phone face down on the counter. Too late, but she did it. There was a long silence between us, the kind that has weight and shape and temperature. Cold. Very cold. "Are you going to say something?" she asked. And her voice had shifted. The warmth was gone, replaced by something more careful. Defensive. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I had loved. This woman I had built a life with, argued with, laughed with, grieved with when we lost her mother 4 years ago. I looked at her and I tried to find the anger I was supposed to feel, and mostly what I found was tired. "The papers are on the counter," I said. "You'll need to sign where Patricia flagged." "That's it. That's all you're going to say." "What do you want me to say, Victoria?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Her eyes went glassy, but I noticed she didn't cry. Not really. And something about that told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been going on. I stood up, pushed in my chair, and walked toward the door. "Charlie." Her voice cracked slightly on my name. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really am." "I know," I said. And I left. I drove for 40 minutes without knowing where I was going. That's not a metaphor. I genuinely just drove. Past the highway entrance 3 times. Past the Waffle House where Victoria and I used to go after late movies. Past the Little League field where I'd coached for 4 summers. Eventually, I ended up in the parking lot of a hardware store I'd never been to, in a part of Raleigh I barely knew, sitting in my truck with the engine off. I called Dave. "Talk," he said, because Dave has answered the phone that way since college. I went to the house. "Yeah." She was on the phone with him. When I walked in, there were 2 coffee mugs. Silence. Dave. I'm here, man. I'm here. I sat at the kitchen table and waited for her to come downstairs. Charlie. I know. Are you okay? I looked out the windshield at a woman loading bags of mulch into a minivan. She was struggling with the last one, and a guy, early 30s, baseball cap, jogged over from nowhere and grabbed it for her. She laughed. He laughed. Total strangers. Not even a little bit, I said. Dave told me to come over. I told him I needed to drive. He made me promise to eat something. I said yeah, and neither of us believed me. I started the truck and took a wrong turn out of the parking lot and ended up on a road I didn't recognize. A long stretch of nothing much, a gas station, a bait shop, and then a diner. Small, old school, the kind with a hand-painted sign and a neon open that flickered. Lena's. I don't know why I pulled in. I wasn't hungry. Maybe I just needed to be somewhere that didn't know my name or my story. Somewhere that had no memory of Charlie and Victoria. I pulled in. The bell above the door announced me to exactly 4 people. An old man reading a newspaper, a teenage kid on his phone, a cook visible through the pass-through window, and a waitress coming out of the back carrying a tray of coffee mugs. She almost walked into me. Oh, whoa, sorry. She steadied the tray with both hands. A pro move. Didn't hear you come in. My fault, I said. She looked up. She had dark eyes and the kind of face that looked like it had seen some things but decided to stay warm anyway. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back. A small scar near her left eyebrow that I noticed and immediately told myself to stop noticing. Sit anywhere, she said. Menus on the table. I took a booth by the window. She came over a minute later with coffee I hadn't asked for and set it down like it was obvious. You look like a coffee kind of morning, she said. Is it that obvious? You've got the eyes, she said simply. Then she pulled out her notepad. Food. Just the coffee's fine. She gave me a look. Not unkind. Just seeing through me a little. I'll bring you some toast. She did. And then she left me alone, which was exactly what I needed. Which made me trust her immediately in the way you sometimes trust strangers with good instincts. I sat there for a long time. Drank the coffee. Ate the toast. Watched cars go by on the road outside. She came back to refill my cup without being asked. Better, she said. Little bit. She nodded like that was enough. Started to walk away. How long have you worked here? I don't know why I asked. It just came out. She turned back. Leaned against the edge of the booth across from me. I don't work here, she said. I own it. I'm Lena. I blinked. Charlie. Charlie. She said it like she was deciding if it fit. You from around here? Raleigh, yeah. You. Originally. Memphis. Ended up here 8 years ago. She smiled slightly. Long story. I've got one of those too, I said. She looked at me for a moment. Really looked, the way people rarely do anymore. Yeah, she said quietly. I can tell. Here's what I want to know. Have you ever had a total stranger show you more warmth in 5 minutes than someone who was supposed to love you showed you in years? Tell me about it in the comments. Seriously. She went back to work. I stayed for another hour. Ordered eggs I actually ate. Left a tip that was probably too big and didn't care. I came back the next morning. And the morning after that. Here's what I learned about Lena in 3 weeks of showing up at that diner. She made the best biscuits in Wake County and knew it. She'd moved to Raleigh after her own marriage ended. Quietly, without drama, the way she seemed to do most things. She'd bought the diner from a retiring couple named Frank and Dolores and had spent 2 years making it hers. She read actual books, the physical kind, and kept one behind the counter. She was funny in a dry, understated way that snuck up on you. What I didn't learn, because she didn't say, was how much the divorce had cost her. I could see it sometimes, in the way she'd go still for a second when something caught her off guard. A song on the radio. A couple holding hands at a corner table. I recognized it because I was doing the same thing. We talked more each time I came in. First, just small things. Coffee preferences, bad local sports takes, the inexplicable popularity of a gas station down the road. Then, bigger things. Slowly. Carefully. The way you test ice before you walk on it. One morning, week 3, a Tuesday, she slid into the booth across from me during a slow hour and just sat there for a second before saying, "So what actually happened? If you want to talk about it." I told her. The whole thing. The slow distance, the numb years, the Friday morning, the 2 coffee mugs, the text message. All of it. She listened without interrupting, which is rarer than it sounds. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The worst part isn't the betrayal, is it?" I looked at her. "The worst part," she said carefully, "is that some piece of you is almost relieved. And then you feel guilty about the relief." The accuracy of that hit me somewhere behind the sternum. "Yeah," I said. "Exactly that." She nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." We sat with that for a minute. Just 2 people in a quiet diner, holding the weight of their honest admissions. "You're going to be okay, Charlie," she said eventually. Not in a cheerful, dismissive way. In a way that sounded like she'd been where I was and had evidence. "How do you know?" I asked. She smiled, small, real. "Because you came back for the toast." I laughed. First real laugh in weeks. It surprised both of us. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday in October. Patricia called me at noon. I was at the diner. Of course I was at the diner. Lena watched my face while I took the call, and when I hung up she just brought me coffee and sat across from me and said, "Done." "Done," I said. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine for exactly 3 seconds. Then she pulled it back and stood up and went back to work. 3 seconds. But I felt it for the rest of the day. Something had shifted between us and we both knew it and neither of us was saying it. Which is why what happened the following Friday nearly destroyed everything. I came in for my usual morning. But Lena wasn't behind the counter. A young guy named Marcus was covering. I asked where she was. He said she'd taken the morning off, personal thing, should be back by noon. I almost left. Instead I ordered coffee and waited. She walked in at 12:15 looking like she'd been crying, which was the first time I'd seen anything crack in her composure. She saw me in the booth and something flickered across her face. Relief? Frustration? Both. She came over. Sat down without asking. "You okay?" I said. "My ex called," she said. He's getting remarried." "Oh." I paused. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. It's been 4 years it's fine." She pressed her lips together. "It just surprised me. That's all." I nodded. Then she looked at me and said something that knocked me sideways. "Is this what I am to you, Charlie? Your recovery diner? Your in-between place?" I opened my mouth. "Because I don't want to be someone's soft place to land while they figure out their next thing." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "I've been that. I can't be that again. Lena, I need to know what you're doing here. Every morning. Because she stopped. Because I'm not as okay with this as I've been pretending." I sat there and looked at her. Really looked. And all my Columbus, Ohio fix the car, don't make a scene instincts were screaming at me to say something safe, something manageable, something that wouldn't cost me anything. Instead I said the wrong thing. "I don't know what I'm doing," I said. "I just got out of 8 years. I can't promise you anything right now. I don't think that's fair to either of us." Her face closed like a door. "Okay," she said quietly. "That's honest." She stood up. "I'll have Marcus take your section today." She walked into the back and didn't come out. I sat there for 10 minutes. Then I left. I didn't come back for 9 days. Those 9 days were the loudest silence I'd ever sat inside. Louder than the marriage falling apart. Louder than the empty house. Because this felt like something I had actually chosen, and chosen wrong. I kept replaying what she'd said. "I don't want to be someone's soft place to land." And I kept replaying what I'd said back, that careful, protected, nothing answer, and feeling worse about it each time. Dave came over on day 4. I told him what happened. He listened. Then he said, with the elegant simplicity that is his greatest gift, "Charlie, you are being an idiot." "Thanks, Dave. You drove 40 minutes in the wrong direction and landed at that diner on the worst morning of your life. You went back every single day for 3 weeks. You lit up talking about her. And when she asked you a real question, you gave her a legal disclaimer." "I didn't say anything." "She didn't ask you to marry her," Dave said. "She just asked if she mattered." I stared at the ceiling of his living room. "She matters," I said. Quiet. "To the ceiling more than to Dave." "Then go tell her that," he said. "Not my ceiling." On day 9 I woke up early, before the alarm, like the morning I'd driven to serve Victoria the papers. But this time it wasn't dread in my chest. It was something closer to clarity. The kind that only arrives after you've sat in your own stubbornness long enough to get bored of it. I drove to Lena's. It was early enough that she was unlocking the front door when I pulled into the lot. She saw my truck and stopped with the key in the lock and just waited. I got out. She was watching me walk across the parking lot with an expression I couldn't fully read. Guarded. Tired. Hopeful in the way that people are hopeful when they've told themselves not to be. I stopped about 3 feet from her. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "I want to be upfront about that. I'm bad at it. I default to silence when I should talk and to practical when I should be honest." I paused. "But I know that 9 days without showing up here was the worst 9 days I've had in a long time. And that's saying something given the year I've had." She looked at me. Didn't speak. "You're not my recovery diner, Lena. You're not an in-between place." I exhaled. I got scared. "You asked me a real question and I got scared and I gave you nothing instead of the truth." "And what's the truth?" she said. Her voice was careful. Even. "The truth is I've been showing up here every morning because this is the best part of my day. You are the best part of my day. And I don't know exactly what that means yet or where it goes. But I know it's real and I know you deserve to hear me say it out loud instead of letting you wonder." The key was still in her hand. She looked at me for a long moment. "You're going to have to do better than panic and disappear when things get honest," she said. "I know. I mean it, Charlie. I'm too old for that." "I know. I am too." The corner of her mouth moved. Just barely. "Toast," she said. "Please," I said. She turned the key and opened the door. 6 months later, I was sitting at the same booth. My booth, which was understood by everyone who worked at Lena's, though nobody had officially declared it, on a Saturday morning in April when Lena came out of the kitchen and slid something across the table to me. A key. I looked up at her. "The back door sticks," she said, not meeting my eyes, fussing with her apron. "I thought you should have one so you can open up when I'm running late." I picked up the key, turned it over in my hand. "Lena." "Don't make it weird, Charlie." "I'm not making it weird. You're doing your Charlie face." "What face?" "The one where you're about to say something that matters and you're trying to decide if you should." She was right. I was. I stood up from the booth. She looked up at me then, those dark, seen some things but stayed warm eyes. I took one step toward her and put my hand on the side of her face and kissed her for the first time. Slow, certain, like something I'd been meaning to do for 6 months and had finally stopped finding reasons not to. She kissed me back. When we pulled apart, she was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Took you long enough." "I'm from Ohio," I said. "We're deliberate." She laughed. That real, full laugh. I decided right then it was my new favorite sound in the world. Better than the one that had first caught my attention at a 4th of July party, because this one was mine. She was laughing at something I'd said, standing in something she'd built, and she was letting me be part of it. The old man with the newspaper looked up from his corner table, looked at us, and went back to his paper without comment. The neon open sign flickered in the window. I thought about Victoria and Dev and the text message and the 2 coffee mugs and the divorce papers on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. I thought about driving 40 minutes with nowhere to go and ending up in a parking lot and making a wrong turn and finding a road I didn't know and a diner with a hand-painted sign. I thought about how the worst morning of my life had delivered me to exactly the right door. I put the key in my pocket. "I'll take some eggs," I said. Lena rolled her eyes. "Sit down, Charlie." I sat down. Biscuit, my dog who had started spending Saturday mornings at the diner with us because Lena had declared him welcome about 3 weeks into our whatever this was, lifted his head from beneath the table, satisfied that the energy in the room had shifted to something warm, and put it back down. Outside, the April light came through the windows and settled on everything golden. I picked up my coffee, took a sip, looked out at the road that had brought me here by accident and kept me here on purpose. Some doors close, I thought, so that a wrong turn can take you somewhere better. Speech balloon, last question, and I really want to hear from you on this one. Do you believe that the worst moment of your life can actually be the thing that redirects you toward something real? Because I didn't used to. Now I do. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's not over. Sometimes the right love doesn't find you until the wrong one finally lets you go.